rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, Whiskey Warriors, Americans, those of you from coast to coast, sea to shining sea, and everywhere in between. This is American Perspective, and I am your wonderful and most humble host, Rick. So I've got a few things, but something popped with the whole Tim Walz thing. And granted, it's from a long time ago, even before his whole, it's actually even before all of his stolen valor stuff that happened. But it's pertinent to the conversation because it starts to demonstrate a pattern, not only with him, but also with his campaign in terms of a pattern of half-truths, falsehoods, and lying. I'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But first, tonight, we have on deck our very own Rumble. I don't know if I want to call her a princess or a queen or anyway, but our very own My News over on Rumble, who will lead us in the fabulous Pledge of Allegiance for tonight. So please, stand and remove your hats, take your hands, and put them over your heart. Well, at least one of them anyway. Place your hand over your heart and join with My News on the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And of course, I thank you, My News, for sending that in. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance read or stated or, whatever, spoken on the program, do me a favor, record yourself doing it, and then, of course, send that audio file off to me at the email address fans, that's FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. Oh, and tonight's sponsor is going to be the Institute on the Constitution. So the Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this. It has 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. The interior pages are water and tear resistant. And look at that binding. It is stitched all the way through the leather. This is no cheap glue here, folks. All the way through the leather. They have a 100-year warranty against manufacturing and materials defects. If something goes wrong with this in 100 years, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. My youngest whiskey warrior has ensured that the information contained within will get you your civics badge in Scouts. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online to get yours today, and make sure that you check out the Institute on the Constitution as well. And of course, I thank them for allowing me to be an affiliate, as always. All right. By the way, background is courtesy of Buddy Weiser from over on Rumble. Okay, so one of the things that has been going on with the Harris campaign, of course, is her hiding. And I think we're on day 26. 26. I think we're on day 26 where she has not taken a single question from the press corps and done any kind of an interview. And ironically, Trump is actually doing an interview tonight, or has done an interview already. He and Vance have done multiples, while both Harris and Walz have been hiding. Well, one of the things that the Harris campaign is trying to do, other than keep her out of the limelight and not let her speak extemporaneously in front of people, because we all know that's when her moron and stupidity shows up. One of the other things that they are attempting to do is, believe it or not, they're trying to separate themselves from the Biden administration's policies. Wait, she was his VP. Why would they want to separate her from her policies? Or his policies, I should say. Well, the reason being, of course, is because of the fact that they want to remold her into something that she literally isn't. But let's take a look here anyway. This in the Washington Free Beacon, as I can find my cursor and get it up there. In the Washington Free Beacon, Biden erasure, Kamala Harris wants you to forget she ever served as Biden's vice president. Harris wants to break away from Biden's failed agenda, campaign advisors said. So, yeah, she's basically been his, by her own admission, Biden's loyal partner since 2020, and now she keeps trying to distance herself from him and the failed policies. Because, of course, if the voters actually find out that she is on the left, and much more left than what Joe Biden was, purported to be in the beginning when he got hired by the people in 2020, she's trying to make sure that she is defining her own campaign. Now, this is what Harris advisors told the left-leaning outlet and I don't know if they're mainstream, but they're a media outlet, Axios. So according to her campaign advisors, Harris is now plotting on how to break away from the whole Bidenomics, which, by the way, we have video of her touting Bidenomics and claiming that Bidenomics was working and all of these things that were just absolutely wonderful, which was an unpopular policy, I must say, with the American people. But there are other unpopular policies, too, that also have brought the administration's approval ratings to record lows and also dumped Biden's approval ratings into the tank, which was part of the reason why he got summarily replaced by Harris, Obama, and Pelosi. So now she is attempting to remake herself, and remake herself in such a way that it's no longer the Biden-Harris agenda. It's now the Biden agenda, and she herself this is my way of doing things. And she's trying to separate herself and distance herself because of the fact that they are so unlikable. And when you put an unlikable policy with an unlikable candidate, you get an unlikable campaign. And that is what she is attempting to try and get away from. Now, a couple people have already pointed out that Kamala Harris has been an integral architect and executor of the policies of the Biden administration, and that the notion that she somehow doesn't deserve credit for it and isn't a part of it, it's frankly somewhat bizarre and offensive. Don't think that her sycophantic followers won't go ahead and jump onto that bandwagon quickly. Just saying. Now, of course, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, the worst press secretaries in all of press secretaries, the sideshow Bob of the White House, she said on Monday that Harris's policy aims are aligned with Biden, stating that there has not been any daylight between the pair's decisions. She has been a critical partner for this president during this term, during his term. So, yeah, I don't know how effective this is going to be. I just don't understand where these people are getting this idea that they're going to be able to break her off of the Biden agenda, the Biden administration agenda, when we all know for a fact that the Biden campaign has been hiding the fact that Biden is cognizantly in trouble. It's the best way to put it. But anyway, they're going to do it anyway. They're going to try. They're going to try and get her to define herself as no longer the status quo kind of candidate, that she is a new candidate in the race, that she is different. We've seen Trump, we've seen Biden, but you haven't seen Kamala Harris as of yet. Well, they actually may be onto something, believe it or not. And the reason why I say that is because, according to this article in the National Pulse, most voters are completely unaware of Harris's radical views. There's some new survey data that has come out that there are significant gaps in voter awareness regarding Kamala Harris's past far-left policy positions. The study, which was conducted by McLaughlin and Associates on behalf of the Media Research Center, found that on 10 aspects of Harris's political record, between 71 and 86% of respondents were either unaware or unsure of her actual positions. Now, this is where we, meaning the conservatives, need to start getting some of these policy positions put out there in front of these people. They need to, they need to make sure that we need to make sure that she is exposed completely. Now, the data also, and this is pretty interesting, the data also reveals that many voters obtain their political views primarily from broadcast networks. Gee, I wonder why. And of course, those broadcast networks, by the way, are ABC, CBS, NBC, and cable channels CNN and MSNBC. This is why we're dealing with people who do not have the political chops to understand the kind of situation that we're in. So the lack of voter knowledge of Harris's record suggests that these outlets have not provided adequate coverage of the Democrat Party's presidential nominee. You think? She hasn't even done any interviews, and those are considered friendly outfits. So the Media Research Center went ahead and reviewed the evening news coverage of those outlets from July 21st into August 10th and found that 8 of the 10 issues examined in the survey were not even singularly mentioned at all. Consequently, the remaining 2 received only limited airtime. So this is all by design, people. They want to remake Kamala Harris into something that she definitely is not. And they are attempting to make her look like she is a messianic style figure that is different than the status quo. They're pushing this. Now, I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep her necessarily out of the spotlight, because sooner or later, she is going to have to answer some questions from somebody somewhere, and it will probably end up happening, you can bet, on September 10th, provided that the debate actually occurs. Speaking of debates, both Vance and Tim Walz have agreed to a debate on, I believe it's October 10th. So a month after the presidential debates, the vice presidential debates will show up. And both of them, I'm sure, are going to be plenty entertaining for both of them. So specifically, this poll found that 71% were unaware of Harris's past advocacy for cutting police funding. 73% did not know about her co-sponsorship of the Green New Deal. 81% were unaware of her support for Medicare for All. And as I told you last night, Medicare for All, she is flipped on that. Okay. 74% were unaware of her 2015 statement that illegal entry into the U.S. should not be considered a crime. Again, broadcast television garnered close to a little over 50% of the sources of election news, while cable news picked up 41.2% and social media rounded that out at 34.4%. National newspapers came in at 10.8%. Public broadcasting at 9.2% were also less common sources, according to, yeah. So this is what scares me, people. I'm serious. I'm being completely 100% serious here. It's that kind of thing that makes it scary, because you still have, even after all of the disinformation and misinformation that the mainstream media has been putting out on all kinds of subjects, I can't even tell you how many subjects that they have screwed up over the last 6 to 8 years. The majority of people are still going to the broadcast networks thinking that they are speaking the truth when they are not. They're not even coming close to speaking the truth. And they're definitely trying to hide who Kamala Harris is because of the fact that they don't want Trump in office. And this seems like a bit of an oxymoron to me because, again, CNN's ratings were incredible when Trump was in office. Yeah. Anyway, my rumblers over here are arguing whether or not the proper terminology for a Democrat is either stupid or ignorant, or in my case, only morons vote Democrat. There we go. All right. Well, Kamala Harris unveiled a new policy that she is going to be looking to implement from day one when she gets into office, she says. First of all, she has to get into office. But second of all, tell me if this doesn't sound like authoritarian and totalitarian control, to be honest with you. Let's take a look. So this in the Daily Wire. Kamala was blasted after unveiling Soviet-style price controls to stop inflation. So she unveiled this apparently on Wednesday evening, which would have been last night, after her campaign announced that she would be revealing leftist price control measures to rein in inflation. Now, again, the mainstream media not telling you the truth. You have to remember that Harris was instrumental in sparking the inflation crisis 3 years ago when she cast the tie-breaking vote to put forth President Biden's American Rescue Plan, which was hardly that, forward in the U.S. Senate. Inflation rates skyrocketed within weeks of that bill being signed into law. So she is seeking to follow in Biden's footsteps by continuing the whole Biden-Harris administration's policy of blaming corporate greed for the pain that consumers feel when shopping, which is cynical and dishonest. And so it's also, believe it or not, it's also designed to misinform or mislead, I should say, those misinformed voters or people who don't understand what the root cause of inflation is. I talked about it on this program. The root cause, simply put, is when the government spends money, it prints that money. That money flows into the economy. There's too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's it, simply. I played the clip of Elon Musk, the richest man, at least in the U.S., if not the world. And even he said the exact same thing. Now, this whole thing is reminiscent of something that, of course, the Soviet nations tried and failed miserably, was doing price controls. Because what ends up happening when you do these price controls, you end up fostering a whole black market system underneath it. Because why not, if you're an entrepreneurial person, why would you not try to sell something for more money than what the government is trying to force you to sell it at? Look, the only thing that would at least try to stem inflation, and it comes with its own set of cons as well, meaning, the pros and cons kind of thing is what I'm referring to. But the only thing that would help stem the flow of inflation, even just a little bit, would be if we were to go back to the gold standard. There, what ends up happening is each dollar that was being printed had a specific value equivalency to an ounce of gold. Now, for a very long time, the U.S. set that price at $35 per ounce. And that lasted for quite some time and actually, sort of helped kind of keep the economy in its place. But there's other problems with that too, which is part of the reason why we did move away from the gold standard completely in 1971, even though we started to move away from it and kind of did like this hybrid mix of a actual gold standard from 1933. You can look all that up on the internet and check all that out. But the point being is that in order to try and stem the idea of inflation, which again is the number of dollars that are actually in print, makes each one being less value when you have too many of them. That is specifically what inflation deals with. And the point being, of course, is that unless you were to back that up or backstop that with something else of value, then you can't necessarily control inflation. If you print more money, you have less value on each dollar. That's how inflation works. And it takes more dollars to actually buy stuff. Is what we're in right now. It's kind of interesting, though, that Harris and Biden and Warren and all the rest, they blame corporate greed, but yet Reuters reported not too long ago that corporate greed is definitely not to blame. And it was a federal study that figured that out. That what ended up happening, and again, this goes back to Economics 101, people. Seriously, you have the cost of goods and services. They're called COGS. And when the costs go up, the price has to go up. The only time that you would get something like corporate greed is if the cost maybe goes up, maybe not, but the differential being what is called the gross profit and a gross profit margin had changed or shifted. Now, they keep blaming the food companies and the grocery stores, but food companies and grocery stores have been shown to be sticking with somewhere around a 1 to 3% gross profit margin on their food items and things like that. There's not a lot of margin in that. And that's exactly what is going on. It's not price gouging, people. It's just that the cost of transport of food, getting the food, the costs of like fertilizer because of, again, this is all based off of petroleum, people. Fertilizer is based off petroleum. You have the diesel, you have all the oil based off petroleum. And when Biden went and cut off the Keystone XL pipeline and made energy prices go up and start skyrocketing, and then added to that all of the spending, this is why we're where we are today. Okay? This is why. And now she's going to try and put in a very authoritarian policy in an attempt to try and control prices when it's going to fail. I can almost guarantee you it's going to fail. Yeah, the Soviets did it, and the results were scarcity and higher costs in terms of things like food products and so on and so forth. So anyway, this is going to fail, folks. It's going to fail. And she will be in the middle of it. Now, oh yes, Woodens, a.k.a. G, over on Rumble, says black markets. Yep, exactly. That's what is going to happen. All right. Well, on a bit of a good note, by the way, we have a couple of states and a few other states, kind of a collaboration of states that are sort of hitting back. So you remember how I was telling you about, and this is a while ago, you may not remember, but there was a Biden executive order that was put out in order to attempt to try and increase the number of voter registrations by telling all government offices and entities in order to get them to actually start registering voters. Now, normally this would be a violation, but a violation of law, because people can't be like, they are not supposed to be incentivized to vote. However, making it all available on federal property really, apparently kind of skirts the law, which that's what they always do. But now, apparently, some states are filing now, this in the Federalist, states file federal lawsuits seeking to shut down, quote, Biden bucks. So Biden's executive order that he put out is using federal agencies to register and mobilize left-leaning voters ahead of the 2024 election. And so now several Republican-led states have joined forces to try and stop the Biden administration's taxpayer-funded get-out-the-vote machine to elect Democrats. Now, this sounds a little interestingly like Zuckerbucks. So the thing about it is, though, is that with the idea, unfortunately, that 3 weeks are left before early voting begins, and what will be reportedly a contentious ballot collection season gets underway, much of the damage from this executive order may already be done. They even admit that. So attorneys general from 9 states, Iowa, Kansas, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and South Dakota, all filed a federal lawsuit asking the U.S. District Court in Wichita, Kansas, to shut down an executive order that is using federal agencies to register and mobilize left-leaning voters with the assistance of White House-approved leftist organizations. Now, again, if this was just a plain get out the vote, we don't care what party you are in, we just want to make sure that you're that you know that you can register to vote, and we don't care what party affiliation you are, that part I can get. That one I can understand. But the problem is that the Biden administration is working with leftist organizations to get out the vote in certain areas. Very, very similar to what Zuckerbucks did back in 2020. So, among the charges, the complaint alleges the Biden administration has usurped the appropriating power of Congress, which did not grant the executive branch authority to fund the unprecedented Get Out the Vote initiative. Now, again, this is probably not going to go anywhere. It's more than likely not going to make any kind of an effect on what's out there and what's going to come. How much you want to bet that they're also registering illegal aliens? Because again, they just have a checkbox that says, do you certify that you are a U.S. citizen? Yeah. A motor voter thing. Anyway, Montana's Attorney General Austin Knudsen told the writer in an interview this week, "We're not going to stand by and let the federal government get turned into a giant voter turnout machine for Democrats. We are going to make sure you follow the law. You've got an executive branch that is far exceeding the authority that has been given to them." That's a surprise. I digress. And I'm facetious. This is something that has never been done before at the federal level. So, yeah, again, Biden is trying to exceed his constitutional authority in order to get this done. And he's thumbing his nose on it. So this is all under Biden's Executive Order 14019, signed at the beginning of his term and turns federal agencies into a voter registration outfit to register voters for state and local elections as well as federal elections. That's what the claim is. The lawsuit itself is also similar to litigation by Pennsylvania state lawmakers. The U.S. Supreme Court ended its last term without taking up the challenge, saying it would not consider the appeal until it returns in late September. By that time, of course, early voting will be well underway in many states, and Election Day will just be over a month away, which pretty much means it will be essentially back in the same situation that we were back when everything started coming out in 2020 and 2021 with all of the voter questionable things where the courts say, well, you don't have standing because there's nothing that we can actually do about it, which is what happened to a majority of those elections fraud cases that the Democrats and the leftist sycophants keep saying, oh, no, Trump lost all of those. No, he didn't. They never got to trial. They never got to be seen in the light because of, for the most part, what was considered lack of standing, which essentially means that the court decided that there was nothing that they could do about it. Here we go again, folks. It's all coming down. Well, Georgia has decided that they are not going to go through the same thing that they did last time in 2020 and also 2022. I don't know if you recall, but there was an article that came out about the Georgia State Election Commission admonishing Fulton County, that's what it is, admonishing Fulton County for basically counting ballots that were illegally cast. Well, Now, here in Town Hall, Georgia grants officials special powers to investigate elections results. So it looks like Georgia is actually going to take some preemptive steps for this. So when ballots are counted, and this, of course, in the piece, when ballots are counted in Georgia this year, officials will have new powers regarding verifying the tabulated results. The media fears that it could delay or derail certification efforts since reasonable inquiry isn't defined in the new ordinance. However, Trump, of course, has described the members of the Georgia Election Board, which is Republican-controlled, as pit bulls for honesty. So here's a quote via ABC News. Georgia gave local officials significant new powers over the certification of election results on Tuesday, a move that could delay or derail future post-election certification processes. In a 3-2 vote, the Republican-controlled state election board voted to define the certification of election results as attesting, after reasonable inquiry, that the tabulation and canvassing of the election are complete and accurate, and that the election results are as true and accurate are a true and accurate accounting of all votes cast in that election. So local certification of election results was once a routine ministerial process. But after the 2020 vote, President Donald Trump and his allies sought to block the process, arguing that officials have discretion to delay or block certification and hoping to use state and county officials to overturn the results. Now, keep in mind, that was via NBC News. So with the way that they framed that, of course, you can see the foundations of election denialism being formed. Now, Republican Governor Brian Kemp has decided to brush off Trump's mean tweet about him a few days ago, which again, I wholeheartedly say you don't attack the guy that is backing you. All right. But Brian Kemp did say that he is vowing to use the full force of his political machine to ensure Trump takes the state this time. We must hope that nothing happens on election night. Forget about potential Democratic Party shenanigans because, of course, I told you about the hackers finding vulnerabilities that can't be fixed. He says, he continues on, this is Brian Kemp, he continues on, I'm sure this will lead to liberals forming conspiracy theories and baseless accusations of fraud against the GOP, though we're not the ones who allegedly engaged in funny business last time. Yeah. So reactions to this news, of course, haven't sent liberals into full meltdown mode yet, but I'm sure it will happen when it happens. Anyway. Yeah. All right. So I have been openly critical, not only on this program, but also on the social media outlets, especially on X. Okay? And I have received mostly positive, mostly appreciative responses from my factual reporting on Tim Walz's stolen valor situation. One thing that I have not discussed, though, is the fact that Tim Walz got arrested for a drunken, or driving under the influence, I should say, a DUI back in 1995. I haven't touched it because, honestly, I mean, anybody can make a mistake. I'm not interested necessarily in the fact that he got arrested on a DUI. The resulting of that, by the way, too, is the fact that he since turned his life around, stopped drinking. To all reports that I'm aware of, he does not drink anymore. And he actually spent a little bit of his time as a football coach and a teacher to talk to high school students about the dangers of drinking and the dangers of alcohol. Now, all of that was based on the premise that he accepted the consequences of his actions, being arrested, and that everything was all hunky-dory, that he was being completely honest about it. He was saying, hey, you know what? I'm cool. Yes, it happened, etc., etc. Well, it turns out that he did not do that. In fact, his campaign in 2006 blamed his DUI arrest not on the fact that he was drunk and driving, but on the fact that he reportedly had hearing loss from his time in the military being an artilleryman. Now, it is true that he was in the military, that he was an artilleryman, and it is also true that he did have some hearing loss, and that hearing loss resulted in a surgery in order to correct it. But the problem is that surgery took place 10 years after his DUI. This is surprising that we're even going to be talking about this on this particular news outlet, but here from CNN, Tim Walz's 2006 campaign falsely described details about his arrest for drunk driving in 1995. So when Walz first ran for Congress in 2006, his campaign repeatedly made false statements about the details regarding his 95 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. Now, according to court and police records connected to the incident, Walz admitted in court that he had been drinking when he was pulled over for driving 96 in a 55-mile-per-hour zone in Nebraska. Walz was then transported by a state trooper to a local hospital in order to take a blood test. That blood test demonstrated that he had a blood alcohol level of 0.128, which of course is well above the state's legal limit of 0.1 at that time, meaning that it was actually 0.028 above. All right. But in 2006, the campaign repeatedly told the press that he had not been drinking that night, that he failed his field sobriety test due to a misunderstanding related to hearing loss from his time in the National Guard. And the campaign also claimed that Walz was allowed to drive himself to the jail that night. Absolutely none of that was actually true. So the Walz campaign, also his then communications director, told local news in 2006 that the DUI charge was dropped for the reason that it wasn't true, and that the trooper had him drive to the station and then leave on his own after being at the station. Well, not only did they find the records, like I just told you, but the Daily Beast actually did an interview with the people, the officer, who, by the way, is retired now. Okay. But the officer that arrested him. So Nebraska State Trooper Stephen Razgorshek cited the axiom formulated while making more than 1,000 busts on such roads, arrests on the roads of Nebraska. He says, one of the things I've always said is anyone can get a DUI. It's what you do with it after you get the DUI. If he had stuck with his story of, look, it changed my life and I stopped drinking, I would commend him 1,000%, which everybody normally would. No different, honestly, than his 24 years in the Army National Guard. There wouldn't have been any question had he been honest about his service, had been honest about his rank, had been honest about the fact that he did leave his troops high and dry, and not try to use any of that to his advantage in order to gain political office. All of that would have been perfectly fine. But he didn't. So the campaign tried to spin it, which I've already told you about, and a transcript of the hearing that followed the September 23rd, 1995 arrest shows that Walz initially responded just as the trooper would have hoped. Along with immediately swearing off the drink, the 31-year-old teacher and football coach had immediately reported the incident to his principal, where he was one of the most popular and highly regarded members of the faculty. Walz has offered his resignation. The principal talked him out of it. And his attorney told the court he did, in fact, though, resign from his extracurricular activities, which included some of his coaching responsibilities. So this is all what happened during the transcript of the court appearance. But the judge concluded, of course, on March 13th, 1996, with the hope that Walz would give proof to an old saying that every adversity has a seed of greater benefit. The judge told Walz, "I certainly hope you have learned from this, and I hope that you can share that with your students." So now he moved shortly thereafter to Minnesota, where he continued teaching high school and resumed coaching football over there. But the truth of the matter was that even though he claimed that he couldn't understand what the officer was saying to him, and they actually tried to like drag the trooper through the mud by saying the trooper refused to speak up. Well, the trooper reported to the Daily Beast and says, "Everyone, all my friends laugh because everyone knows if I do one thing, it's speak very loudly. My wife and kids and mom are laughing, saying, 'Stephen, you've never been told to speak up.'" As for the troubles with balancing that they claim, the trooper, I'm not going to try and repeat his name because I'll probably mincemeat it, but the trooper said that the tests he conducted, including what's called a horizontal gaze nystagmus. This test is when you take a pen and you move it and you tell you ask the person to follow the object with your eyes only. And apparently, as a part of the test, if your eyes twitch at roughly a 45 degree, it's a fairly reliable indication of inebriation. So, yeah, he was also told that a hearing problem had nothing to do with the eyes. Now, additionally, and this is another part that that Walz failed to mention, was that not only did his blood alcohol level come back that high, but he also failed the breathalyzer. Breathalyzer has nothing to do with hearing. Yeah. So here we go. Once again, Walz got out of it, but has been lying about the experience afterward. We can't trust anything this guy says. Nothing. Everything that he talks about and everything that he has said. I mean, look, again, hey, if you have an alcohol or drug addiction problem and you've tried to get help, I totally get it. Okay. And there are people who are able to break the cycle, and there are people who are unable to break the cycle. It unfortunately is an independent kind of scenario. But the problem here is not so much that he had the DUI. The problem here is not so much that he was arrested for it. The problem here is the fact that he lied about it afterward. All you have to do, people, is just be honest. I mean, is it anybody's business that he got into this little mess? No, not really. But when you run for public office, you know for a fact that your history, your backstory, your any little thing that you might have done is going to be examined. And the truth is going to come out sooner or later. To sit there and to just be like, you know what? I did this. I made a mistake, because people make mistakes. It is human. I made a mistake. I've learned from it. I've never done it again. That's more honorable and speaks to more of your integrity than to lie about what happened. If people would just do that more often, we wouldn't be in of the mess that we are in. I just can't. This guy is not who we want. And his partner in Harris, she is not who we want. And if you're planning on voting for them, especially if you're planning on voting for her just because she happens to be a woman and a reported person of color, we've already discussed all of this, then you are a literal moron. And that's why I keep saying that only morons vote Democrat. You have to understand the policies that these people are trying to implement. All they are going to do, no matter what happens, keep in mind, everybody argues and says, hey, Walz just wants to feed the kids. Yet his Minnesota Department of Education, which oversaw a program to feed the kids, is under investigation with the nonprofit organization that they partnered with for a $250 million theft of government funds. Okay, this is not rocket science. This is all stuff that's out there on the internet. You can find it. And I got into a back and forth once again with the whole idea about Trump and the suckers and losers, and that Trump hates the military, that he hates veterans. Yet we have Gold Star families who have stepped forward and stated clearly, like the ones did at the RNC, the 13 Afghani or Afghanistan victims of that bomb, as we were cowardly pulling out due to the Biden administration, which, by the way, is today's anniversary. They all stood up there on the RNC stage and told the story of how Donald Trump sat them down and they felt seen. That the Biden administration and Biden himself did not reach out to them. And this gentleman or lady, I don't know, this account on X kept saying, well, General Kelly said this, General Kelly said that. Well, guess what? General Kelly was also called to the carpet, not only by Trump and fired, but by all the other people who were in the same vicinity when Kelly said that he thought he heard, or that Trump told him, about the whole suckers and losers comment and all of this about, I can't have photographs taken with amputees because, that's just bad for my image. No, the reason why Donald Trump didn't want all the cameras when he went to go visit those people is he didn't need them to be in the spotlight. It was a private moment between him and the veterans to whom he was speaking. He does that a lot. He makes phone calls. He tries to visit. He's gone to funerals of people who have died. He tried to get to the Corey Compratore funeral. This is not who Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, who looked at his watch when those 13 bodies came back from Afghanistan. This is not who these people are. Donald Trump cares about the veterans, the military. He cares about the first responders. They also, that same account also tried to revive the lie that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein raped Katie Johnson. First of all, there was no Katie Johnson. Vox, which is a left-wing outlet, don't you think that they would have loved to have jumped on that story? They even wrote an entire piece discrediting the entire thing, saying that they were unable to verify any of the claims being made. They couldn't even identify who Katie Johnson actually was. And they were able to identify the fact that the two people that were pushing that whole thing, at least one of them in particular, was a Jerry Springer producer. The case in that particular situation, which was back in 2016, I think, 2015, 2016, was dropped. Now, there are some claims that it was dropped because these people, were threatened, blah, blah, blah. Vox couldn't find any evidence of that. Believe me, if the media, who have constantly been after Trump ever since he turned Republican, wanted that to be true and were able to find evidence of it, it would have been plastered all over the place. Just like the whole Epstein thing with him flying to Lolita Island, telling you that black book would have been immediately redacted in some cases, but would have been produced and shown off as like exhibit number 1. Trump already admitted to flying on the aircraft between Florida and New York City. And even the witnesses within, like the Ghislaine, I don't remember her first name, but anyway, Ghislaine's trial, even the witnesses there said they never saw Donald Trump. They only heard Epstein and Ghislaine talking about it, but they never saw him. These people are nuts, and they're going to stay nuts until and even after the election coming up in November. We've got to try and we seriously have to try and combat their misinformation, their disinformation with the reality, the truth, because only light can destroy these things. Thank you, Outlaw Dogs. Ghislaine Maxwell. Anyway. All right, one last thing that I want to tell you about. I mean, we've already kind of, the news has already kind of talked about this. Israel is preparing for some sort of a large-scale attack from Iran, and the U.S. has been ordering warships and I think a couple of aircraft carriers into the region. And they're trying to accelerate the deployment of those to get them over there quickly. Yeah. We're on World War III's door. Let's just put it that way. And do you really want cackling Kamala and tampon Tim Walz to be in charge when that happens? No, you don't. All right, folks. That's the end of it for me for tonight. Do me a favor, if you haven't done so already, please head on over to rumble.com. Get an account. It is free. It is the free speech alternative to YouTube. And once you are there, search up the channel American Perspective and hit that green follow button to be notified every single time that I go live. Also, too, if you are already signed in and over there, make sure you hit that thumbs up button because that helps me get noticed by Rumble. You can also hit the like and thumbs up buttons, and I'll do all the emotes on things like Facebook and YouTube, and also over on X. Those are my other outlets that I stream to. I do appreciate all of that. We'll see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.